welcome to the We Geek Together podcast. My name is Andrew, and I have my friend and guest, Spencer.
Hello.
And this is a podcast recorded here in our gaming tavern. Today we are talking about good and bad Dungeon Master advice. Really, I want to talk about the bad DM advice we get. And that's today's topic. But before we get to the topic, we have a few things. First off, we're going to have pre-show drinks where we're going to talk about just what's new in our life. Then we'll get to the main course. And then we'll have the shot of the day, something really interesting that we want to talk about just in the gaming space. And then we'll have the last call for drinks. So let's get into the pre-show drinks. What is new with you, Spencer? How's life?
Oh, life's pretty crazy right now for me. I'm a student at Utah Valley University, kind of up the hill from us here, and I'm a senior technically, I guess. Getting ready to graduate soon, but
finals are around the corner.
Yeah, exactly. And so I've been pretty busy these last couple weeks, I guess. And
it's been hard to get this time together to do a podcast, and that's not on you. My life is also really busy, but I've seen December is brutal right now.
Our text threads are just like, I have to cancel. Let's put it off till a couple days, and then the next person's like, oh hey, that's not gonna work for me. Let's do it.
This podcast took a week just to finally find an hour or two just to record. So thank you again.
Yeah. Hopefully our release schedule is gonna be a little bit more regular. We'll have to kind of work out some of those kinks
with the new year.
Yeah,
definitely.
So hopefully we can get a backlog a little bit of some episodes. Anyways. What about you?
What's new with me? Let me see. The store's doing pretty good. Evermore just opened up, and actually is really exciting because this is the first time they're doing a free Evermore. It doesn't charge anything to go in.
Really?
And so when I was there tonight, there was a lot of people there.
Dang.
And the park looks beautiful. Like, they really decorated it for the holiday, Christmas kind of spirit. Tons of lights, Tons of stuff. They have Saint Nick in one of the rooms, and they decorated the room just really well. Like, honestly, this might be the prettiest Evermore I've seen.
Wow. And they always, for the holidays, they kind of
they do
theme for the event or whatever, right? But
this is the prettiest.
Wow,
Maybe it's because
awesome.
it's like dark and covered in snow, and it's got Christmas lights. But there's definitely some magic in the air.
That's cool. And it was also, there was a rumor about how they were going under or some such thing, right? Like there was people were kind of dooming and glooming the end of Evermore, and now they're back and better than ever.
Hopefully, they're killing it for this season. So I'm really excited to see what they do for the next seasons.
Okay, well, cool.
All right, so that's the pre-show drinks. Let's get into the main topic today. I really wanted to talk about Dungeon Master advice. I specifically want to talk about the bad Dungeon Master advice that we hear. Stuff that maybe we've been told by other Dungeon Masters or influencers or YouTubers. The reason I had this idea is because I did a panel at Dragonsteel, and I heard some amazing advice at the panel. But I also heard some advice that I'm like, that doesn't sit well with me. But of course, that's not to poo-poo on any of the other panelists. They're all really amazing and well put together people, but much more than me. So I'm not speaking ill of them, but I want to. There's some Dungeon Master advice that I think, we should talk about. So
it's interesting because. I think you and I have been playing TTRPGs for about as long as we've been friends.
Shit, yeah, true.
And so we've it was like before you were a tavern owner and I was an audio guy, we were
slinging sandwiches,
Dungeon Masters,
and also Dungeon Masters.
So, all right, well, this should be good, I think, hopefully.
Yeah, and I mean, we both have experience being Dungeon Masters, so we've definitely had our own growing pains. So I'll start. One of the this is the advice that got me to think about this. When somebody says, I want to put horror in my games of 5e, and the advice somebody gives them is, you shouldn't be playing 5e. You should instead play Call of Cthulhu, or you should play Blades in the Dark, okay? I understand. Now, that's not a wrong answer, okay?
Because those games they lend themselves really well to horror.
Yeah, and better. Better than 5e, like absolutely. But the challenges that come with learning a new system, onboarding your players into a new system, that puts a lot of barriers to entry for any dungeon master. I don't care how experienced you are. That's a big workload in front. If somebody's just like, I want to run a horror setting in my game, I think there's better advice that we can give about setting the tone and making your characters feel vulnerable and that kind of stuff that applies to any system, not just 5e. That applies to any system instead of just saying the system you're using is wrong.
Well, and for TTRPGs, I feel like there's at least two elements to any game, right? There's the actual like mechanical elements.
Where, the rules.
Yeah, exactly. The system that you're playing in, and then there's the storytelling element, which is completely independent.
Yeah.
Right. Like you don't need a D100 system like in Call of Cthulhu, with all the intricate elements of that game, to tell a horrifying story in 5th edition.
Yeah, I would say any dungeon master who's a good storyteller and can bring good story elements can put a horror setting in any system.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be like it could be sci-fi. It could be murder mystery. It could be, private eye investigations. Whatever you're trying to do, a ton of it comes down to your skill as a storyteller and how you incorporate those elements. Yes, the system definitely does aid, but it's not the end all be all. And that's one of the pieces of advice. Again, that's not wrong advice. Like if somebody says, what's the best first person shooter on Xbox? And then you say, don't play on Xbox, buy a PC and then play this game. Like, well, you are technically right, 100%. But that's not the question. They want to know what's the best game on PC or on Xbox. So let's give that.
I feel like the dodging of the answer and the kind of urge to be right in the situation is present in a lot of like fandoms and nerd spaces and things like
True.
that. And so maybe just in general, as general life advice, how to be a better person, don't just like not answer the question in this way. You know what I mean? Like help people meet people with where they want to be met. You know what I mean? With the question that they want answered rather than the objective right.
The premium right. Yeah.
But that does kind of lead into maybe my piece of bad advice, which is maybe it's not even bad advice as much as it is like a bad habit that DMs have sometimes is being too like strict with the rules.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? Regardless of what game you're playing, I personally have the most experience with 5th edition. But regardless, if you are just like really bearing down on the rules, I guess it depends, right? Because some people really like that. They're like, look, I just want to play within the exact parameters of the system that we're playing, and I want it to be perfect. And if that's the case, if that's how your players want to play, maybe do be exactly strict with the rules.
True.
But in my experience, and I ended up playing with a lot of new players and trying to like teach new people how to play, and that's like a large percentage of the player base that I'm used to. For the most part, they just want to have a good time.
Yeah.
They're just playing D&D because their friends want to, or because, it's a fun way to spend a Saturday night or whatever. And so the rules, in my experience, with that kind of player base, take a back seat to the fun of the players.
That's fantastic. Yeah. Rules aren't everything. Like you said, it depends on your group. Some people really love to like min-max and like find all the intricacies of the things.
Yeah.
But especially new players, people who you're trying to introduce to the system, like usually what I do when somebody says, and I had this today because I was doing a D&D game. It was Dragonborn. Can I breathe my lightning onto my metal weapon and then charge my metal weapon with electricity? And I tell them, well, rules is there isn't really a way to do that. However,
it's cool.
It's pretty darn cool. Let's say that in a bit you're going to be able to get a magical item that will allow you to do it. And so then
like a sword that needs to be charged.
Yeah, and
That's
so
cool.
I gave him a sword that he can breathe into, and then it did extra elemental damage based off of what element he put it in. And so I was still able to teach him the rule. Okay, but I was still able to allow him to do what he wanted at the same time.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a good sign of a dungeon master, somebody who doesn't poo-poo on cool, fun ideas, and instead you're like, well, you know what? It usually doesn't work that way, but that sounds pretty cool. Let's try it out. Let's see what happens.
Anyone who's been a dungeon master knows that the whole thing is one giant practice in improv.
Oh yeah,
And the number one rule of improv
never
is
say
yes
no.
and.
Yeah, yes
right?
and. Yeah.
So like if they're like, hey, can I do this? Yes, here's how we're gonna make it happen. You know what I mean? Or we're gonna do something very similar to it. Or you could even keep the rules discussion in your head. Like, okay, well that means that we have to figure out X, Y, and Z thing. But the bottom line, the answer is, yeah, let's do it. Let's do what you're asking about.
Yeah. Now that you have said that, that leads me into we're doing fantastic actually.
Good.
I love this. Is to, as a dungeon master, and this is a high level concept. This one is one that takes me a while to figure out, is when to actually say no. Okay, because we're talking about, we want to facilitate fun. We want to have fun. We want the players, especially new players, we want them to have fun and grow into this world. But there are times as a dungeon master that saying no to protect your the tone and the feeling of the world, to make sure that the stakes stay focused and important. There are times that you can say no, but it's again, it's very careful. Most of the time, I agree with you. Like 90% of the time, it's the yes and. However, if you have approached your players and 5 of your players were like, hey, we're going to have a really gritty, crunchy dungeon master or dungeon delving adventure. And then one player's like, I want to be a clown, and my clown uses improvised pies as his weapons. Being able to say no to that player and be like, hey, look, we're playing the setting. Let's try to find something else out, so you can preserve the other player's fun. That is tricky, and I'm not the master at that. Matt Colville did a whole 30-minute video about how to say no as a dungeon master, and I think that's it's really interesting because we hear a lot about, like what you said, we should always be facilitating yes, and I agree 90% of the time, but there are some times that you should say no.
Well, it's kind of like we've talked about in the tavern, right? Like, your fun, you can do whatever you want. You can have as much fun as you want, as long as it doesn't infringe upon the fun
of another
player.
Yeah.
And so if you, like in this example that you're saying, that clown with the pie weapons, that actually sounds super cool and fun.
That sounds hilarious.
It just doesn't fit in this setting that the other players are trying to want to play in. So maybe after this session or after this campaign, we do a goofy circus campaign. You know what I mean? Or like something where everyone chooses a different, random thing, and now all of a sudden you've got a clown and an anime girl,
like
and
a Suicide Squad kind of.
Yeah, exactly. It's like weird, crazy stuff, but that's the point. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, you're right. Or like, let's say the wizard who wants to be able to do everything, know, and saying, well, you shouldn't be able to heal because we have a cleric and they have built their healing or stuff like that. Or the barbarian can't pick locks because our rogue picks locks, and so like being able to be able to exactly.
This is a little bit of a tangent, I guess, but because more so than even a D&D player, I'm a Magic player. And recently Magic has leaned really hard into this concept of or rather these products that are like crossover products with other IPs.
Yeah, the universes beyond. Yeah.
They're really popular. They
Super
sell
fun.
a lot, and it's bringing a lot of people into the game, and as a result, Wizards of the Coast is making a lot more of them and trying to propagate it a bunch. And for me, I don't really like my foods to mix in this way, if you will.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
You don't want to have your Holy Knight fighting with a Space Marine fighting with Spider-Man.
Exactly. It just doesn't feel right to me. And when I play with people in public places, like when I play here and people bring their whatever, their Lord of the Rings deck to play against my Magic stuff. I'm never gonna be like, no, I don't think we don't do that here, or whatever. But for me personally, I won't like build decks that mix both elements.
Yeah.
With one exception, I built a cube.
Your cube's amazing.
It's the Universes Beyond cube where we draft out all these cards, and it has exclusively cards from Universes Beyond.
Well, but that's the thing. It's like a whole melting pot of everything else Magic.
So now we're playing Magic, but it's with Transformers and Godzilla and The Walking Dead
Chun-Li.
and like all this like random stuff. But that's part of the appeal.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of a long story, all just to say there's a time and place for everything. And learning when to say no to one thing is, in a way, also learning how to say yes to it at another time.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yeah, well said.
Yeah.
Well said. Those are, so that's my advice. Learning the rare moments to say no. Okay. Do you have any other good or bad advice?
No, not really. Actually,
That's okay.
I'm trying to think of like what. Hold on, I had one and then we kind of went off on tangent. Now I'm a little stuck on it.
Yeah, my brain is. I can think of some other bad advice. One of the, this isn't bad advice, but this is advice that isn't really talked about at all, and I think this is actually really important. It's the feeling outside of your play space. So, for example, if I go over to my buddy's apartment to play D&D, and he's got the TV going, and he's got 2 shirtless toddlers running around, and the guy sitting next to me is watching YouTube videos, that'll be insanely hard for me as a player to get absorbed into the world, to really get stuck in that place. Versus if I am in a place where the atmosphere feels nice, where the TV is off, phones are off, dungeon masters maybe have a basket where people can put their phones in, or at the very least put it on silent while you're sitting at the table. Get rid of noisy kids, make sure it's before or after their bedtime, make sure that it's happening after a meal, or you're bringing food, but ideally after a meal, because eating is still distracting. And so the atmosphere around honestly can really lend your players the aid to either just get distracted and not really get absorbed in your game, or to allow them to get absorbed. And that's advice that's rarely talked about. And I'm not talking about that you have to like have the best gaming space with a nice table and RGB lights and all the sound effects, and you have to be Matt Mercer and be able to do every voice effect. I'm not saying you have to go that far, but just having a clean space with a TV off and no screaming kids, that does worlds better than a really loud place. And that's something that, that's one of the reasons why I opened the tavern, is so people can come and play. And I understand you're playing in a public area, so there are some distractions, but we've been pretty mindful of, the spacing of everything and having a secondary wall that kind of blocks noise, so there's always a quieter side in the tavern. And so, atmosphere is really important to me, and I don't think it's talked nearly enough in the D&D community.
That actually reminds me of the next thing I want to talk about.
We're just knocking out of the park today.
we don't have time to waste on this. No, but the thing for me that I think that I've seen some people get hung up on, just kind of needlessly, is you don't need all the things.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Yes, it's cool to have all of the books with all the references.
Custom minis for every anime.
Exactly. A mat. I have a
TV table with animated Dungeon Master screen with a TV in your Dungeon Master screen. That's the new thing right now.
That's pretty cool.
It is pretty cool. I want one.
Yeah. But the first time I ever played D&D, I was a kid. I didn't know it was called D&D. Mm-hmm. And I didn't really even know that there were any rules or anything. It was just some other kid who had a D20 and an imagination sat me down and was like, okay, you're in this room. What are you going to do? I was like, what am I going to do? You know what I mean? That's really all it takes. And because you can, most people have got phones with apps on them. You just download Dice.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
A Dice app.
And then just chat. and then roll, push the button and roll your d20 or whatever, and your whoever's doing the narration, they just like make up rules, and it's totally cool because in its most like basic form, D&D is just sort of collaborative storytelling.
Exactly.
And that's all you need. And you can have literally the sky as the limit for the gear and equipment and cool swag or whatever that you use. And literally everything in between. So don't not start playing because you don't have what you need.
Yeah.
Just start with whatever you have.
Yeah. One of the funnest games of D&D I ever played, I was laying on my apartment carpet floor in a brightly lit room, and I had my character sheet paper in one hand, and I had a set of dice, and like that was it. And I remember that campaign so well, and it was like one of the best times I've had with friends.
Yeah.
And like we didn't have tables, we didn't have maps, we didn't have minis. It was just our imagination sitting on the carpet. Like we didn't even have chairs. We were poor, college kids, so we couldn't even afford chairs. We had a couch, and the dungeon master got the couch for his books. So
one more funny story about that. I was when I was dating my now wife, I was playing a lot of Magic, playing a lot of D&D, and so I would rope her into this stuff. And the first time we got together to play D&D, we were playing or whatever, and she's like, "Wait a second. My dad used to do this with us when we were kids, and he just didn't say it was D&D. He just lifted all these rules and made us think he was the coolest dad ever."
That's awesome.
Meanwhile, he's just playing D&D.
He's just playing D&D. Well, he was indoctrinating them while they were young.
Yeah, exactly.
There you go. Yeah, I can't wait to play D&D with my kids. Heck yeah, though. But that's a great thing, like, because we see people post their photos of their cool room. I saw one where it was like, Dungeon Masters, you need to level up. Like, get on this Dungeon Masters level. And he had like a whole table that was a whole dungeon. Like every room was made and printed and models, and it looked amazing. Like no doubt it was a blast. But you do not need that to play D&D, and that's probably that's a really near and dear element to my heart. You can literally play not even with dice, just you and a buddy telling a story. That is a TTRPG. And we say D&D, but honestly it's just TTRPG.
Yeah, it's any game system.
Yeah, any game system you can play, you can have fun. And you don't need all this stuff because it's getting quite expensive out there.
Well, another thing that I just thought of is there's also like creative, ways to kind of get the equipment. Not get it, but what am I trying to say? I'm thinking specifically of the example you guys are doing for the holidays of like building gingerbread houses.
Oh, yeah.
And then using those as a dungeon.
As a dungeon.
That's freaking cool. That's like one of the dopest things. And you could just do that. I mean, sure, you could do it around the holidays, but you could do that whenever you want. You know what I mean?
Build a
little
dungeon out of graham
gingerbread
crackers.
village, and then just like go play through it.
I will say one of my favorite things about TTRPGs is all the different facets in the game space, especially as a dungeon master. Like, yes, creating a storytelling. But did you also know you could become a prop maker, aging paper, handwriting, or a dungeon a 3D designer? So many dungeon masters have learned 3D printing solely because of D&D or TTRPGs. So you learn this whole new aspect. Or one of my great buddies, his now full-time job is modeling miniatures, and he just makes miniatures. And so it's like, and there's another one who's an artist who makes music for TTRPG. So the fact that like there's so many facets, so many different things that all like pull into a game of whatever tabletop game you're playing is so cool.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, so let's get to the shot of the day. This is something that's really interesting that's happening in the nerd space, and we want to talk about it. So have you heard of MCDM?
No, I have no idea what that means.
Oh, that's awesome. I got to tell you about it. MCDM is this guy on YouTube who, like 8 or 9 years ago, started making running the game videos. So this is how you can be a dungeon master. Just start now. And great advice. His name is Matt Colville, and you can find him on YouTube, Matt Colville or MCDM. And he just gave out free advice. And he's been playing D&D since like 2nd edition, and his job has been in game development. Like he made Bad Company, he's been in Turtle Rock Studios, so like he makes video games. He's made some different games. So like the guy knows what he's doing when it comes to games. Anyway, so he's now grown enough followers on YouTube where he's been able to make his own company, MCDM, and they publish D&D supplements. So they make a new class and then they send it out, and they've got so cool stuff. Like one of their classes is called Beast Heart, where you have like an animal companion, and your animal companion, the more it fights, the more fury it gets. It gets more angry and wild, and then you can leech that fury and use it for yourself for spells or like to kind of turn yourself into an animal.
Interesting.
But you're like connected to your animal, like you're like soul bonded to your animal. So it's like it's like a very interesting kind of nerd fantasy, but yeah, they've created some really cool classes. When WotC kind of lit the TTRPG world on fire in March, that was interesting.
Good times.
They announced we're going to make our own TTRPG system, and it's going to be a high fantasy cinematic game. They want it to be really cinematic.
What does that even mean? How do you make a game cinematic?
I know. It's been very interesting. So I've been following their development. It's like stuff that's really fun and flashy. So like, for example, you as a team have like if you know the Avengers, where Iron Man shoots his laser at Captain America's shield, and then Captain America like uses his shield to like mow down three guys. Like you're fighting through hordes of minions to get to the final boss, and like their dungeon masters or game masters are called directors. Cool. And so they're leaning heavy into we want really cinematic, really high stakes, really fun things, and we want to kind of step away a bit from the grindy and the boring aspects of TTRPGs.
That's really fair, because I found as a DM, one of the most challenging things when you're leading a game is to make combat interesting.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It sounds like this is built around the idea of do whatever you want, just make it awesome.
Yeah, and they've been working really hard on a really fun combat system. One of the things they said is how they do initiative, and I'm blanking on it, but I'm like, I kind of just want to run initiative like this every time. But yeah, so they have some really cool ideas. I'm really excited. But the reason why I'm talking about them is because yesterday they launched the Kickstarter. And they've been working on the rules since March. They've been working on the rules. But they launched the Kickstarter to fund the rest of the project. And they were trying to raise $800,000, which is a pretty penny.
Yeah.
And in the first 8 hours, they had raised $1.5 million.
Holy cow.
In the first 8 hours.
And it's still going.
Oh, yeah. No, this came out yesterday. So you still got 28 days while I'm recording. You know, we'll get this out whenever. But, like, you'll be able to back it halfway through January. And they've said you'll definitely be able to purchase it even after. Dang. And they said, like, don't worry if you don't get in now because, like, we've hit the funding. We will publish this product and you can buy in later once reviews are out. Like, if you're kind of on the wall.
Sure.
They're saying, like, just wait. You know, it's going to be awesome.
Dang.
So I really want to spend a lot of money and buy the limited edition. It's like $250, but it's the limited edition. Cool. And I never buy limited editions because I think mostly they're scams. But like, I really like what this guy does, and it's TTRPG. Yeah. So.
Dang, that's super cool.
I might get some new books for my bookshelf in a bit. But yeah. Fun. That's the shot of the day. So go check out MCDM. They're really cool. I've reached out to them a few times to see if we could have them show up for the Dead Wars.
That could be cool.
They weren't able to make it last year, but you know, fingers crossed. One day I'd love to have them. Yeah, here that would be super cool.
Yeah, have them on the podcast.
Yep. All right. Final call for drinks. There's some pretty interesting stuff. It's December. You know, we got a lot of fun stuff going on. You talked a bit about Gingerbread Dungeon, but I'm pretty sure we'll have this episode out. So you'll hear about Gingerbread Dungeon in a following episode and how that went. But we are doing something really special. It's the Saturday before Christmas. It's like the 23rd. We're calling it Procrastinators Shopping Day, where we're going to have some pretty good deals
Nice.
for people who put Christmas shopping off to the last day. So
That is hilarious.
So if you are having troubles finding a present, you can swing into our store and check that out. And get ready for Dead Wars, May 3rd and 4th.
Oh, it's like
It's
officially on the schedule.
calendar. I am
That's
working.
exciting.
Well, you know what? I'll save that for the next episode. Wait.
Cliffhanger.
Yes, but
to be continued.
Yeah. Thanks for joining me on this episode.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And thank you for everyone who watched, and we'll see you again next time.
Follow us on social media.
Oh, dang it. Social media plugs. Yeah, we're on Instagram. We're on TikTok, on YouTube. I released a really good video on YouTube. It's at 3,000 views already. And
Nice.
it is all about how you should destroy your Magic the Gathering cards so nobody will ever steal them. I've had some pretty mean comments because of it. And yeah, I definitely deserved it. But all right, thank you.